The air conditioning in the conference room is set to Arctic, but sweat beads on his upper lip. He sits across the long, polished table, flanked by his two lawyers, their faces stony masks. My own lawyer, Sarah, sits beside me, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp, missing nothing. I stare at him.
John.
My husband. Or rather, the man who is my husband. His lawyer, Mr. Henderson, is speaking, droning on about settlement offers, about percentages, about splitting assets. It's the same negotiation dance we've been doing for months, a macabre waltz through the ruins of a life I thought we were building together. They want my business. Or they want to cripple it, bleed it dry to cover
His debts.
the debts I didn't know about. The debt he took out using my business as collateral. $2 million. Just gone. Spent on God knows what, bad investments, maybe another woman, maybe just the quiet, insidious rot that had been eating him alive from the inside. Henderson finishes, leaning back, a smug look flickering across his face. They think they have me. They think because the loan is tied to the business, it's a business problem, a joint problem we have to solve by dismantling everything I built. He glances at John, a subtle nod of assurance. John avoids my eyes. He's been avoiding my eyes for a long time. Sarah clears her throat. Her voice is calm, even cutting through the cold air. Mr. Henderson, she says, we've considered your offer. We reject it. Henderson's smugness falters, replaced by mild surprise. John finally looks up, a flicker of irritation crossing his features. He expected me to fold. He always expected me to fold. Sarah continues, her voice gaining a quiet strength that makes the hairs on my arms stand up. This is it. This is the moment we've been working towards in the suffocating secrecy of the past few weeks. We have, however, she says, prepared a counterproposal. One we believe fairly addresses the liabilities John incurred. She slides a document across the table towards Henderson. John watches, a slight frown creasing his brow. Henderson picks it up, his eyes scanning the page. The silence stretches, thick and heavy. The only sound is the hum of the aggressive air conditioning. Henderson's eyes widen slightly. He reads faster now, his face paling. He drops the document as if it's burned him. It flutters onto the table. John looks at Henderson, confused. What is it? He mutters. Henderson doesn't answer immediately. His gaze is fixed on Sarah, then on me. His mask is gone. His face is a map of pure, unadulterated shock. What is it, David? John asks again, his voice sharper. Henderson finally turns to John, his voice a low, strained whisper. They've filed an emergency motion. John leans forward, impatience warring with apprehension. For what? Henderson swallows hard. He looks like he's about to be sick. For immediate attachment and seizure of your shares. In Weston Corporation. The name hangs in the air. Weston Corporation. His company. The one he built, piece by piece, over 15 years. His pride. His empire. The source of the money he blew. The source of the shares he thought were untouchable, safely separated from the mess he'd made of my business. John freezes. I watch it happen in slow motion. The color drains from his face. His eyes, usually flicking with restless energy, become still, locked on Henderson's face. His mouth falls open slightly.
He makes a small, choked sound.
His lawyer, the other one, the younger one, picks up the document, reads it, and gasps. He covers his mouth with his hand. John doesn't move.
He doesn't speak.
He just sits there, across the table, the man who systematically dismantled my trust, who gambled with my future, who thought he was so clever, so protected. And in this moment, facing the quiet, devastating power of a legal document he never saw coming, he is utterly, completely blindsided. He thought he was safe. He thought he could take what he wanted, lie, manipulate, and walk away relatively unscathed while I picked up the pieces of my ruined business. He never imagined I'd find a way to hit him where he lived. Not his wallet, not his reputation, but the very foundation of his carefully constructed world. His shares, his control, his company. He just sits there, frozen, while the Arctic air in the room seems to get even colder. The silence is no longer just heavy. It's deafening. It's the sound of an empire crumbling. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know.
Before this.
Before the conference rooms and the lawyers and the biting cold air. Before the betrayal ripped through my life like a chainsaw through silk. There was a life. A normal life, whatever that means. It felt normal to me. Comfortable, predictable, safe. I had my business. A small design and marketing agency. I started it 10 years ago, from my kitchen table, with a laptop and a fierce belief in what I did. It grew. Slowly at first, then faster. I hired people. Leased an office. It wasn't a multi-million-dollar corporation, but it was mine. It was profitable. It provided a good life for me.
And for John.
He had his company, Weston Corporation Consulting. High-level strategy stuff. He traveled a lot. Always busy. Always important. We lived in a nice house in the suburbs. Took vacations. Had dinner parties. On the surface, we were the picture of success. The power couple. Both running our own things. Supportive. Independent but together. Or so I thought. I remember late nights in my office, poring over proposals, sketching ideas. He'd come in sometimes, bring me tea, kiss the top of my head. Still working hard, he'd say. And I'd smile, tired but happy. Someone has to. I'd joke. He'd laugh. It felt like a partnership. Two people building their futures side by side. My desire back then was simple. To build something real. Something that lasted. A company with integrity, that did good work, that my employees were proud to be a part of. And to build a life with John. A shared life, based on trust and mutual respect. The bedrock of any healthy relationship, right?
Trust.
I trusted him implicitly. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. My partner. The man I shared my bed with, my dreams with, my everything with. He knew everything about my business. The finances, the clients, the plans for the future. He'd offer advice sometimes, strategic insights from his world. I valued his opinion. He even helped me secure the initial loan for the office space expansion a few years back, navigating the bank paperwork. He seemed like my biggest champion. My rock. Looking back now, the cracks were probably there. Microfractures in the foundation I chose to ignore. The increasing secrecy around his own work. The late nights that didn't feel like work. The way he'd brush off questions about his business performance. I attributed it to the stress of his high-stakes world. His company was bigger than mine, more complex. I told myself he was just protecting me from the worry. My naivete now feels like a physical pain. The disruption came not with a bang, but with a cold, official whisper on the phone. It was a Tuesday. I was in the middle of a planning meeting.
My phone rang.
An unknown number. I usually let them go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Ms. Eleanor Vance, a voice said. It was crisp, formal. From the First National Bank. Yes, speaking. Ms. Vance, I'm calling regarding account number. They rattled off a long string of numbers. It wasn't my main business account number. It wasn't my personal account number. I'm sorry, I said, frowning. I don't recognize that account number. This account is linked to a commercial loan, the voice continued, unperturbed. Secured by assets related to Vance Designs LLC, my company. It's currently in default. My blood ran cold. Default? A commercial loan? Secured by Vance Designs? It made no sense. I hadn't taken out any new loans. Not in years. Not since the office expansion. There must be a mistake, I said, my voice trembling slightly. My company doesn't have any loans in default. Our records indicate a loan agreement signed 18 months ago, the voice stated flatly. For $2 million. John Vance is listed as the primary borrower. Vance Designs LLC assets were provided as collateral with your signed consent. Signed consent? $2 million? My head was spinning. That's impossible, I whispered. I never signed for a $2 million loan.
John
wouldn't. The documentation includes what appears to be your signature, Ms. Vance, the voice said, polite but firm. We've attempted to contact Mr. Vance multiple times regarding the default. We require immediate payment of the outstanding balance, or we will be forced to begin proceedings to seize the collateral. The collateral? My business. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking. My employees were looking at me, their faces etched with concern. I mumbled something about a personal call, ended the meeting abruptly, and stumbled back into my office. $2 million.
John.
Default. My signature. It couldn't be real. It had to be a scam. A mistake. I called John. His phone went straight to voicemail. I called his office. His assistant said he was in meetings all day. A wall of polite obstruction. The bank sent the paperwork via email that evening. I opened the attachment with trembling fingers. The loan document. There it was. The amount. $2 million. The collateral. All assets, present and future, of Vance Designs LLC, and a signature. A signature that looked startlingly like mine. But it wasn't mine. Not really. The slant was slightly off. The loop on the V was too perfect. It was a forgery. A damn good one. John had taken out a $2 million loan. He had forged my signature. He had put my business, my life's work, on the line. And now he was in default. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Worse than grief. Worse than anger. It was the tearing away of the very fabric of my reality. The man I loved, the man I built a life with, had secretly dismantled my future. And used me, used my trust, used my company, to do it. When he finally came home that night late, as usual, I was waiting for him. The house was dark, save for the single lamp I had turned on in the living room. The air was thick with unspoken dread. He walked in, loosening his tie, a tired smile on his face. "Hey, you're still up." I held up the printed document. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely keep it steady. "What is this, John?" His smile vanished. His eyes flicked from my face to the paper. For a split second, I saw it. Guilt, fear, caught in the act panic. Then, the mask slammed back down. "Oh, that," he said, trying for casual. It failed miserably. His voice cracked. "Oh, that," I repeated, my voice rising. "You call taking out a $2 million loan against my business, forging my signature, and then defaulting on it. Oh, that?" He walked further into the room, feigning calm. "Let's not overreact, Eleanor." Overreact. I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up. "My business is about to be seized by the bank, and you want me not to overreact." "It's complicated," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I needed the money. Just for a short while. A bridge loan." "Needed money for what, John? What could you possibly need $2 million for that you had to steal it from me?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Investments." Things got tight. Tight. His company? Weston Corp? It was supposed to be thriving. He drove expensive cars, wore tailored suits, stayed in five-star hotels on his business trips. "Yes, tight," he snapped, his tone hardening, shifting from placating to defensive. "Business is cyclical. There was an opportunity. A big one. It required capital. I planned to pay it back quickly. Before anyone knew. And forging my signature? Putting my business on the line? Was that part of the plan, too?" My voice was cold now, stripped of emotion, replaced by a chilling clarity. He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I knew you wouldn't understand. You're so careful with your money. You wouldn't have taken the risk. But this was a sure thing, Eleanor. I swear. Just bad timing. It fell through." "A sure thing?" I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You risked everything I built on a sure thing that fell through?" "It's not ideal, I know," he said, his voice dropping to a placating tone again. "But we'll figure it out. Together. We'll talk to the bank. Explain the situation. Get an extension. We're married, Eleanor. My debts are your debts. We'll handle this." "My debts are your debts." I felt a surge of pure, hot rage. "You didn't make this our debt, John. You did this in secret. You defrauded me. You put a gun to the head of my business. He flinched at the word defrauded. It's not fraud. We're married. Joint assets. Not like this.
I yelled.
Not with forgery. Not with lies. You didn't ask. You took. You risked everything I worked for. The fight escalated, spiraling into a chaotic mess of accusations, denials, and his pathetic attempts to minimize the damage. He tried to turn it back on me. Said I was being hysterical. Said I didn't understand the pressures he was under. Said it was just business. Just business? I repeated, the words tasting like ash. You destroyed our marriage with your just business. He didn't have a good answer for that. Because it was true. The trust was gone. Incinerated. And without trust, what was left? The early struggles were brutal. The bank was relentless. They didn't care about my marital problems. They cared about the defaulted loans secured by my assets. Letters arrived daily. Phone calls at all hours. My employees started to notice something was wrong. The stress was suffocating. I couldn't sleep.
Couldn't eat.
Every time the phone rang, my heart leaped into my throat. John, meanwhile, became distant. Defensive. He refused to provide details about where the money went. He insisted it was a temporary setback. He talked about restructuring his own business, about finding new investors. He acted as though I was being unreasonable by focusing on the $2 million elephant in the room that was threatening to trample my company. I needed help. I contacted a lawyer. A family friend recommended Sarah Jenkins. She had a reputation for being sharp, tenacious, and empathetic. Sitting in her office for the first time felt like taking my first breath in weeks. I laid out everything. The marriage, the business, the phone call, the forged document, John's reaction. She listened patiently, taking notes. When I finished, the silence hung heavy. Then she spoke. Eleanor, she said, her voice kind but firm. This is serious. What John did is not just a marital issue. It's potentially criminal.
Forgery.
Bank fraud. It's also a significant legal challenge regarding your business assets. She explained the situation. The bank had a valid loan document, while my signature was forged, proving that could be complex and time-consuming. In the meantime, the bank had the right to pursue the collateral, my business. So they can just take it. I asked, my voice small. They can initiate proceedings to seize and sell your assets to recover the debt, Sarah confirmed. We need to act quickly. We need to fight the bank, arguing the forgery.
We also need to deal with John.
This debt is his. He needs to be held accountable. And he needs to find a way to satisfy this debt, not you, and certainly not by sacrificing your business. The initial strategy was defensive. Engage with the bank, inform them of the potential forgery, buy time. Get a forensic handwriting analyst involved. Simultaneously, begin divorce proceedings and seek an injunction to prevent John from incurring further debt or transferring assets.
It was a race against time.
The rising challenges mounted quickly. The bank was unconvinced about the forgery claim, at least initially. They had their process. They had their paperwork. They wanted their money. Deadlines loomed. John's response to the legal action was hostile. His lawyers argued that the debt was a joint marital debt, despite the forgery. They claimed the money was used for joint expenses or investments that would have benefited both of us. More lies. My business started to suffer. The looming threat, the stress, the time I had to spend dealing with lawyers and banks, it all took a toll. I missed deadlines. Clients sensed my distraction. Cash flow became tight, not just because of the potential seizure, but because the business itself was faltering under the weight of the crisis. Every conversation with John was a battle. He oscillated between blaming me for not understanding his vision and trying to manipulate me into believing we could still fix it together, as if he hadn't deliberately set fire to our life. He seemed genuinely unable or unwilling to grasp the magnitude of his actions and the damage he had caused. Or maybe he just didn't care, so long as he got out okay. The deeper we got into the legal battle, the clearer it became. Proving the forgery definitively would take time. Time the bank wasn't willing to give me. Time my business didn't have. The bank's lawyers were pushing hard. They had a straightforward case, a loan agreement, collateral, a default. Unless I could produce an alternative source of funds for the $2 million immediately, or prove the forgery beyond a shadow of a doubt before the seizure deadline, my business was forfeit. All seemed lost. My lawyers were doing their best, but the legal wheels turned slowly. The bank's deadline was fast approaching. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining the bailiffs walking into my office, packing up computers, selling off furniture. My employees losing their jobs. 10 years of hard work gone. Because of him. Because of his greed, his recklessness, his betrayal. John seemed untouchable. His company, Weston Corp., appeared solid on the outside. He kept up appearances, traveling, meeting clients. The legal fight felt asymmetrical. He had put my vulnerable business on the line, while his own seemed protected, shielded by corporate veils and legal maneuvering. He thought he was winning. He thought he could run down the clock, let the bank take my business, and emerge from the divorce with his primary asset, Weston Corp., intact. One evening, after a particularly demoralizing meeting with Sarah where we discussed the diminishing options, I walked home through the city. The streetlights blurred through the tears in my eyes. I felt hollowed out, defeated. Everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. The man who promised to love and protect me was actively dismantling my life. I stood on a bridge, looking down at the river. The water flowed dark and cold below. A dangerous thought flickered through my mind, quickly extinguished by the fierce, stubborn spark of anger that still glowed deep inside me. I wouldn't let him win. Not like this. I wouldn't let him take everything and leave me with nothing. I called Sarah from the bridge. My voice was hoarse, but clear. "Sarah," I said, "we need a different approach. We're playing defense and we're losing. We need to go on offense. We need to hit him where it hurts." "Eleanor," she said, her voice cautious, "we're exploring every avenue, but asset seizure is complex, especially with corporate structures."
No, interrupta.
Think about it. He used my business as collateral for his debt. He thought that was a one-way street. He thought he could expose me, but stay hidden himself. We need to turn that around. That debt is tied to him. And his primary asset is Weston Corporation. His shares in Weston Corporation.
Can we
make the debt attached to that? Sarah was silent for a moment. I could almost hear her brain working. "It's unconventional," she finally said. "Debt attachment usually follows a judgment. But with a commercial loan default and the evidence of fraud, there might be an argument for an emergency remedy, especially if we can show he's trying to shield assets. But it would be aggressive. Very aggressive. It would shake his world to its core." "Good," I said, the word a quiet vow. "Let's shake it. We need to get that $2 million from him, using his assets. Not let the bank take mine, and then maybe, eventually, hope to recover something from him through divorce court. We need to stop the bleeding now and force him to pay the debt he created." "It would require a specific legal strategy," Sarah mused. "Targeting his shares directly. Arguing that because the debt is his and he fraudulently attached your business, his most significant asset should be the first target for repayment. It's a way to satisfy the bank's claim, clear the collateral on your business, and place the burden squarely back on him, immediately. Can we do it?" "It's high risk, high reward," she said. "It would be a complex legal maneuver. We'd need compelling evidence of his fraudulent intent, beyond just the forgery. We'd need to move quickly and silently. He can't know it's coming. If he gets wind of it, he could try to transfer or hide those shares. But if we can get the court to agree to an emergency attachment, it could work." "Let's do it," I said. My resolve hardened, crystallizing in the cold night air. The fear was still there, a knot in my stomach, but beneath it, a new feeling was growing. A cold, determined focus. He thought he could destroy me? He thought he could get away with it? Not anymore. I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to fight back. And I was going to use his own weapon, financial leverage, and legal strategy against him. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and her team worked tirelessly and in absolute secrecy. We gathered more evidence. We showed the bank statements from the account where the $2 million loan was deposited, money that vanished quickly, with no discernible benefit to our joint life or my business. We pieced together details of his failed investments, the opportunity he'd gambled on. We built a case not just for forgery, but for deliberate, fraudulent misrepresentation and misuse of funds, all while attempting to leave me holding the bag. The legal strategy to target his shares was intricate. It involved filing sealed motions, presenting compelling evidence of his actions and the imminent threat to my business, and arguing for an emergency order that would allow immediate attachment and seizure of his shares in Weston Corp to satisfy the outstanding debt owed to the bank. The argument was, essentially, he created this debt, he put her business at risk, his primary asset is his company shares, therefore, his shares should be used to pay his debt and free her business. It was audacious. It was aggressive. It was perfect. We timed it for maximum impact. The hearing on the bank's motion to seize my business assets was scheduled. We filed our emergency motion for attachment and seizure of John's shares just days before, requesting it be heard concurrently or immediately prior, arguing the bank was targeting the wrong party's assets. This led us back to the conference room. The Arctic air, the polished table, the stony faces of his lawyers, John's smugness slowly dissolving into confusion. Sarah had just delivered the blow. Immediate attachment and seizure of your shares. In Weston Corporation. John sits frozen.
His lawyers are in disarray.
Henderson is frantically rereading the document. The younger lawyer is whispering urgently into John's ear, but John doesn't seem to hear him. He looks at me. Really looks at me, for the first time in months. The fear in his eyes is raw, exposed. He sees not the wife he betrayed, not the victim he planned to leave behind, but the architect of his potential ruin. The irony is a bitter pill. He thought he was so powerful, so in control. He leveraged my vulnerability, my trust, my business. He never considered that I might find a way to leverage his company, his pride and joy, his fortress.
You
can't. He finally croaks out, his voice raspy. Sarah speaks again, her voice calm, stating the legal reality. The court has granted our emergency motion, John. Based on the evidence presented regarding the fraudulent nature of the loan origination and your default, your shares in Weston Corp are now under court order for attachment. They will be assessed, and a portion sufficient to cover the outstanding debt to First National Bank will be seized and transferred. Seized and transferred. The words hang heavy in the air. Not just a lien. Not just a frozen account.
seized, taken.
To pay his debt. His face contorts. Not with anger. Not with sadness. With pure, animalistic panic. My shares, he says, the reality sinking in.
But
that's my company. I built that. Yes, John. I say, my voice steady, emotionless. The dryness of it surprises even me. Just like I built Vance Designs. The business you mortgaged and defaulted on. He stares at me, speechless. The man who always had an excuse, a lie, a manipulation, has nothing. He is cornered. Blindsided. The power has shifted. He came to this meeting expecting to negotiate the terms of my business's dismantling. He is leaving facing the potential dismantling of his own. Henderson recovers slightly. This is outrageous, he blusters. An unprecedented overreach. We'll appeal. You can appeal, Mr. Henderson, Sarah replies calmly. But the emergency order is in place. The shares are attached. The process has begun. The bank will be satisfied. Eleanor's business will be free of the collateral claim. And John will need to explain to his partners and investors why a significant portion of his ownership stake in Weston Corp is being seized to pay a personal debt he accrued through fraud. That lands. His partners. His investors. His carefully crafted image. He hasn't just lost control of his shares, he's lost control of his narrative. The whispers will start. What kind of man risks his company like this? What other secrets is he hiding? John finally speaks again, his voice barely above a whisper.
You
You planned this. I look at him, the ruins of our life stretching between us. You gave me no choice, John. I say, the coldness in my voice absolute. You pointed a gun at my head. I just found a way to make you drop it. He doesn't say anything else. He can't. He's too busy watching his world collapse around him. The victory isn't sweet. It's cold. Hard one. It's the taste of necessity, of survival, of turning the tables not for revenge, but because it was the only way to save myself. The immediate aftermath is a flurry of legal activity. John's lawyers scramble. The bank, suddenly faced with the prospect of getting their money from a much more solvent source, John's shares, rather than chasing the potentially complicated foreclosure on my business with a pending forgery claim, becomes remarkably cooperative. The court-ordered assessment of John's shares begins. It's a painful, drawn-out process, exposing the financial details of Weston Corp., the very things he'd been so secretive about. Turns out he was leveraging his shares elsewhere too, taking out loans he was struggling to service. The $2 million wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern of reckless financial behavior that had been hidden behind his facade of success. The irony isn't lost on me. His empire wasn't as stable as it seemed. His secret borrowing, intended to project strength or fund risky ventures, ultimately became the tool of his undoing. A significant block of his Weston Corp shares, valued sufficiently to cover the $2 million debt plus associated legal costs, is seized and transferred. To whom? To the bank, initially as part of the settlement process. It cleans the slate for my business. The lien is removed. The bank is paid. My company is safe. John is devastated. Losing those shares means losing control, losing face, potentially losing his position within Weston Corporation. His partners, when the full story comes out, the secret loan, the forgery, the attachment proceedings, are furious. His credibility is in tatters. His power is diminished. My business, Vance Designs, is battered but alive. The stress has taken its toll. I've lost some clients, some momentum, but the core is still there. My employees are still here. We survived. Emotionally, I'm a wasteland. The betrayal is a wound that will never fully heal. The man I loved, the man I trusted completely, turned out to be a stranger, a con artist, a threat. The life we built together is gone, replaced by court documents, legal bills, and the cold, hard truth of what he was capable of. There's no joy in his downfall. Only a profound sadness for the loss of the future I thought I had, and a quiet, weary satisfaction that I stood up for myself, that I didn't roll over, that I found a way to fight back when everything seemed hopeless. Rebuilding begins slowly. It's not just rebuilding the business, it's rebuilding my life, my sense of self, my ability to trust. I lean on Sarah, not just as a lawyer, but as a lifeline. I talk to my employees, honestly, explaining the crisis we faced and how we navigated it. Their support is a balm. The divorce proceeds, almost as an afterthought now. The major financial battle was won with the share seizure. The rest is just sorting through the debris. John is broken, humbled, but still deflecting responsibility. He tries to paint himself as the victim of an overly aggressive legal maneuver. It's pathetic. I focus on my business. I focus on my healing. The office feels like a sanctuary again, a place of purpose and creation. The threat is gone. The air is clearer. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that conference room. The Arctic air, the frozen look on his face. The moment he realized he had lost. It wasn't a moment of triumph for me. It was a moment of liberation. The chains he had tried to put on me, on my business, were broken. And the mechanism of their breaking came from the very asset he thought untouchable. He used my business as collateral. I used his company's shares to pay for it. A cold, clean symmetry. I am different now. Harder, maybe. Wiser, definitely. The world isn't as safe as I thought. People aren't always who they seem. Even the people you share your life with. But I also learned something else. I am stronger than I knew. More resilient. I can face down betrayal. I can stand on a bridge in the dark, contemplate despair, and choose to fight instead. The business is thriving again. Stronger now because it survived. And I am stronger too. The scar remains, a reminder of the cost of misplaced trust. But it is a scar, not a fatal wound. I look out at the city lights from my office window, no longer blurred by tears, but sharp and clear. I am still here. And I am free. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.